Welcome to the podcast. In this episode, we're going to be giving advice for first-year engineering students or incoming engineering students on just how to do well and some of our advice. Matt, you want to kick us off?
Yes. So when it comes to freshman year, one of probably the best things I did when starting out was spending time trying to do well in those first year classes.
Why is that? Why do first-year classes matter in engineering?
First year classes in engineering matter for two reasons immediately that come to mind. Number one is that they are the foundation for a lot of the more advanced classes. So if you understand how the integral works, that will help. That's just part of calculus. It will help you pretty much in later classes because the integral actually is a very important component of many of the equations that pop up in more advanced engineering classes. So if you understand on a fundamental level like what's happening there, so if you understand the calculus, even like physics, so with my background in electrical, that basic material you learn in like physics 2, electricity and magnetism, it ends up being sort of setting a foundation for what you learn later on. That said, another reason is that your classes generally won't get easier. They'll get more difficult as time goes on. So if you can take advantage of these potentially being some of the easier classes in your entire degree, and not to mention some of the classes where, make this point in a minute, but if you could take advantage of them being some of the easiest classes in your degree, you're then going to have a little bit of a cushion compared for your GPA if you didn't necessarily do as well.
Because basically your GPA is like your average of all of your grades.
Right.
And so if you do better on some classes, you have room to you should always be trying to do your best, but you have room if you get a B or something like that or other grades in other classes that might be harder to get an A. Because one of the things that I think we both noticed in engineering, or at least I'll say, is there are some classes where it might be really easy to get a B. Mm-hmm. It might be insane, so hard to get an A. The difference between a B and an A in some classes could be an extra hour of work a week. The difference between a B and an A in other classes, some of these later engineering classes, could be 10 hours of work a week or 20 hours of work. It's not necessarily proportional for every class. So when you have classes where you should be able to be doing well on, you want to make sure that you're doing well on them to help your GPA.
And I think that could maybe be a separate video, sort of prioritization and maybe strategies around GPA.
Let us know if you want that.
Things like that.
Let us know if you want it.
I think that would be wise to expand on that. Yeah. But otherwise, too, with those first year classes is, did I make my 2 points? Yeah, I said the 2 points. One was the GPA for the GPA, and the other was they set a good foundation. What would you say for freshmen?
I think going on the foundation on why it's important, there a lot of these are prereqs for some of your later engineering classes, and they're prereqs for a reason. Because one of the things is the engine pace in engineering is very fast. Mm-hmm. The first 2 weeks is going to be review of old material for prereqs. Mm-hmm. It's usually a review, and you're introducing the new topics.
So you're talking about when you hit junior year.
Sophomore, junior, senior year.
Sophomore year, junior, senior. The first maybe week or two, some of the material will be on these freshman level classes.
Yeah, prereqs. And it's going to feel this is so easy. I'm moving through it. And then all of a sudden, once you dive into the material, the whole speed of everything changes. Mm-hmm. And it's 5-10 new equations in a lecture. Mm-hmm. And it might be integrations that are involved. And in some classes, it all depends on the professor. But in some classes and some of the very fast-paced ones, there's not going to be time to take and pause and to look back on, do you know how to integrate? Do you know how to differentiate? Do you know the Laplace transform? Mm-hmm. Do you know how to do these different mathematics? So the best thing to do is to make sure that when you learn something, you're good on it, you're confident on it, and it is set, ready to help you in the next classes.
And you said you're not going to have time. And that kind of leads into the next thing I was going to say, which is you don't want to slip too far behind, because if you are behind in class and maybe understand, say at this point in time, you finally start understanding material from 2 weeks ago, you have already dug yourself into a pretty deep hole.
Yeah, you want to keep the pace go. You want to stay like always make sure that you're following lecture like for that week and making sure that you're kind of always being on top
Yeah.
of the material because you never know when things in the class are going to really speed up and go to a completely brand new topic that's pretty challenging, but is going to require those past weeks. And I think that's maybe one of the things we're talking about is engineering. Always build. There's so much to learn at the undergraduate level. It's always building on each other. And it's
yeah.
always like it's stacking a tower from level 1 to level 2. Every week is just a new level. And so you got to make sure that you're always keeping up the pace.
And so how do you then keep up the pace? I would say, like, say you're struggling. I would say one is like, don't be afraid to read the textbook and read it like before lecture. Don't skip lecture, pay attention during lecture. And then probably next I would say is office hours. Don't be afraid to, if you're struggling to understand a topic, go to office hours to have your professor maybe explain it to you better in a more setting that's a little closer knit than lecture.
I think I came up with a statement like a week ago or so where it was like I could divide my engineering degree pre-office hours and post-office hours. Pre-office hours is when I thought that I shouldn't need to go to office hours. I should be able to figure it out on my own. And I wanted to just keep working for 10, 12, 15 hours on a problem and not have to go to office hours to make sure I knew it. And then post office hours was when I realized office hours can be super helpful. And after a few hours on a problem and actually like honestly assessing, do I know what I'm doing or do I not? Going into office hours for help and like prioritizing those times that you have with the professors and the TAs. And it helped me do things way faster, but it also helped me know it better.
And the office hours is not, so if you're an incoming student, is not for the students that are struggling and like about to fail class.
It's for everybody.
It's for everybody. It's not. I don't want anybody to think that office hours is, if you go to office hours that means you're not smart enough.
Or only going to office hours when you're behind.
Office hours is literally the smart thing to do.
I think
It's
so.
it's the smart thing.
If I had to restart engineering, I'd probably go to office hours more as a freshman because I barely ever went. I can't, like, I barely ever went to office hours my first 2 years or something like that. I can't remember
but it's
exactly.
very helpful. So
Yeah.
that's what else for freshmen?
Actionable
Maybe we can do
tips.
one or
Yeah.
more
A
things.
couple things that I thought was really helpful. Number one, you kind of mentioned this reading the textbook. I really liked to do that before lecture. And it doesn't even have to be like when I would read it. Like it's not even like I would expect myself to be able to do practice problems after reading it. Just like mental exposure to what's being talked about.
Understanding of it.
Because there's some stuff where like if it's a definition or an equation, for me, it was like, okay, I've already seen it before. I don't have to focus on something being new. I've already kind of seen it, even though I might not have fully understood it. Number two, I taking like a couple minutes after lecture, if you have time, sometimes you're in like back-to-back classes or something like that, but digesting what just happened during lecture and making sure like that info would settle and actually like I would absorb that material.
No, that makes sense. Just repeatedly exposing yourself to it helps with remembering it. And then also, so since we talked about before and after, how about during lecture? I think that it's important to be actively engaged with the lecture when you're in there. It depending on the class and the professor. Sometimes you can raise your hand and ask questions, and I have seen very smart students do that. I know I did that. It's over time. I think it's something you become more comfortable doing. But also another thing is maybe sitting in the front too.
That can help.
It will keep you, because like if you're sitting in the front, if you're sitting in the front and you start getting distracted, like
I think I
people
usually
in the back will see.
I usually personally like I would sit, I think, like in the back just because I liked it and like just being in the back. But like for some about it, like when I felt like up front, like sometimes like just like looking up at like a big screen might have been like a little too much for me.
The classroom.
Yeah, I think the main thing, but I get what you're saying. If you're sitting in front, the professor's right there, you might definitely be like more focused and paying attention. But ultimately, that's what it boils down to, though. Like that's what it comes down to: focus and attention.
That is our probably first in this, maybe I think we might do a couple of these advice for freshmen. But anyways, let us know if you liked it. If you liked it, we might make another one. So hopefully you found this enjoyable, and thanks for watching.